I just had some major work done on my super sloped driveway. So what I'm going to do is show you guys some before footage I took from when we first got here before any work was done. And then I'll show you kind of what it looks like now. Okay, so here's the hill, my driveway coming in before any work has been done. So it was pretty roughly cut in, whoever the previous owner was. And you can see water had come down along this side here. The slope angles down here, so all the water just runs down that way, down towards the hill, down the hill. So I feel like maybe the previous owner had tried to dig this out down here by hand and ended up hitting rock. So, I mean, the way to do that right, you need heavy machinery to actually chop that rock up. So there's not much they could do but just leave it as is. So it kind of runs down there and then runs towards the bottom here. It comes across and empties out over there. So the work's going to be done to kind of make this much more accessible. Because right now, even getting from the road to the bottom of the hill, it's kind of a mess and it dips down. So pulling in, you might even bottom out pulling in and out there. So obviously this dirt hill coming up in certain weather conditions would be poor. So we're going to get this done and see how much better it is, how much it improves my access here to the property. Okay, so here's the bottom of the hill at the road. The drainage ditch along the road comes down right here, and there's just a little bit of standing water. So it's not much, just a little bit damp. But then it's coming across here, and you can see like ruts pulling in and out because it dips. See if I can get that. Yeah, it like dips down across here and then runs across the drive, and then down in there is kind of where it all empties out, a low spot. So you can see from the bottom here, that's a little bit of a hill. That's fairly steep, and being mud the way it is just isn't acceptable. It's going to make it difficult to move, so we're going to get that worked on. The water just comes down this way, and then you can see as it comes down, there's this big pile of pine needles and stuff that's washing down. So it's washing down the hill and then coming across the driveway to go over to that low spot there. So we're going to see if he does the work, if it's going to keep the water off to one side and out of the way. So when they got down as far as they can get to it and got the slope to as best as it was going to get, what they had me do was bring the van down and start crawling up and see how it went. There was a couple of spots where my tires were slipping a little bit. So then they went and then retouched those areas back up and then had me come back down. And when I came back up, I was just crawling it barely over an idle, and I was able to get up the entire hill without any tires spinning. So that was a huge change from what I was dealing with, because before, since I've gotten out here, what I would do is pull off the road and basically just gun it up, step on it, and you know, rocks would be kicking and everything. Sometimes, depending on the weather conditions, the traction control would kick on and start doing its thing. So it was a total nightmare, because every time I would go to leave or come back, it was like, oh, is this going to be the time that I get stuck or I can't get up, or something bad happens? So this is a huge burden lifted off my shoulders getting this worked on. Here's a shot of what we got so far. You can see from the road, you drive off there, and they had installed a culvert, so any water that had fallen down off of this hill would come, and it runs through the culvert underneath the driveway. So before, where this was all getting washed out, The water's now going to run across and then come out the other side here to that low spot where there's a culvert down over there, and then goes out under the street and away. So here's a little top-down view of the slope. See what I'm working with. And you can also see from the walls on either side that they had cut down pretty deep into it, as much as they could before hitting the big rock. So when they got done, it seemed like, oh, this is so perfect. Well, then the next day, of course, none of my stories out here have a perfectly happy ending, but the following day, it was drizzling all day. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to go check out how the hill is doing with this drizzle. So I had went and left. I was like, okay, it's not bad at all. There's no water sitting, nothing bad. And then we came back up. It was like a sheet of ice because it was all fresh clay just all sitting on top. And just it getting wet, the tires were spinning. I almost didn't make it back up the hill. And I was like, oh man, I can't believe they just did this work and it's still that bad. But then that night we had super hard thunderstorms. It was brutal storm. It's the worst we've had to deal with since I've been here. And what was actually nice was it was a really hard rain accompanying it, downpour. So it actually washed a lot of that top layer of silt off and down. And it left it kind of a little bit rocky down there. And now it seems like with that there, it's much more better traction than it was when it was just straight clay sitting up on top. So I kind of like how it is now, a mixture of just gravel, some smaller, some bigger, mixed in with the clay. And I think as I drive up and down it and it rains on it more, it's gonna make that gravel really bite into the clay hard and create a nice surface. So he said, you know, before we put down any gravel or do anything, let's give it some time and see what the hill does, you know. So we're thinking maybe January or something we'll get back in contact and see what we want to do. So I have a little bit of time. Initially we thought, well, we'll gravel it, but I'm kind of worried because graveling it might actually make it worse. You know, I might just slip on the gravel, especially when it's fresh like that and hasn't had a chance to pack. It could just spin my tires. So I'm thinking maybe I'll go the route of just getting a pile of gravel dropped off, and just if there's anywhere I'm slipping, just kind of spread a little bit there and then work on packing that down so there's a little bit of grit to work with. The heavy rain kind of washed away a lot of the top clay that was just sitting on top. And now you can see it's got a lot of like gravel mixed in with it. So it's like a mixture of that really hard orange clay in the gravel. I think the gravel is going to help with the grit a lot more after my bad experience trying to get up with the clay fresh. So I'm thinking what I might have him do is come just drop off a big pile of gravel like up at the top of the hill and just spot, like sprinkle some gravel around so it's like this. If there's any spots where I'm slipping, I can just add just a little bit of gravel and keep it like this mix of clay and gravel. They have the hill pitched to the left side here into a ditch, so all the water will run off down into the ditch, and has a nice little channel to go down, and then they put it so it diverts off down towards the culvert there. That super storm we had right after they did the work caused a lot of the fresh stuff to get piled up down here. You can see there's a whole bunch of silt in that right there. So I'm just going to have to get down here with a shovel and just kind of clean that up, make sure the culvert over here stays nice and clear. So then this water isn't sitting over here. Everything will drain properly and go in the culvert and then out and around. Another angle shot of it. Not only is it just much more passable than it was, and the water's going to move properly, but it's also much more attractive. Um, and it's I don't know how well it's going to come across here, but you can see the slope up the hill is much more gradual than it was. It's still going to be sloped so much because they got to a point where they just hit big rocks that were wider than the excavator they were using. So you can only go so far. They said they got it as gradually sloped as they could without using dynamite. So this is just a slope I'll have to deal with. And you can see my van up at top for kind of for scale there. So when you buy a property like this that has a very difficult, complicated feature like this hill, uh, it's something you can't expect you just work on one time and then your problem goes away. No, this is probably something I'm going to have to deal with my entire time living here, because any road will deteriorate. If you put a nice, perfect gravel driveway in, eventually every few years, you're going to need a little bit of work done to it to upkeep it. I mean, even our roads, what they do out, you see there's road construction year round all the time. So even those fall apart. That's just part of it, you know. I'm thinking with this, I'm going to just, for the time being, just keep ahead, watch what the weather's going to look like. If it looks like it's going to be raining or storming, or being winter here, maybe there's going to be ice or snow. I'll just try to make sure I go and do my errands ahead of time, make sure I have all the stuff I need out here so I don't have to traverse the hill, you know, when it's in bad conditions. So it's kind of a work in progress. We're just playing it by ear. At least the slope is cut out, which is a huge deal, you know. When it's not raining, at least I can get up it no problem without having to gun it. So it's already a major improvement. It's not all rutted out and everything. It's much better. So I'm just gonna go along, see what needs to be done with it to keep it passable, and then I'll maybe in the future make videos when we decide what we're going to do with it.